Some people, when they have someone facing a challenge, might choose to run a marathon, and I simply made a choice for a different type of marathon, and mine is photographing a single flower every single day to honor someone on an Alzheimer's journey. My mom had been diagnosed with cognitive impairment, and we knew she was slowly declining and had been warned that if she had a fall that could speed the decline, and unfortunately that's exactly what happened. And as a family member, there are certain things that one can do to help when someone is not well, whatever their challenge may be, but we want to be able to completely fix it, and sometimes we can't. In our scenario with Mom's Alzheimer's, I was feeling quite helpless, and one way that I sort of process things as a photographer is I go outside, connect with nature, and take pictures. And one day I got this idea that maybe something that I could do to honor Mom on her journey with Alzheimer's would be to take a photograph of a flower every day. And it took me about a week to decide to step out on that ledge and say out loud that I was going to make a commitment to taking a photograph of a flower every day. And it started one morning when I was on a walk and spotted the sun on a single bloom of Queen Anne's lace. And that has long been a flower that I have associated with my mother. And I returned to that spot with my camera and got a photograph of Queen Anne's lace, and that marked the first day. When I first told my brother about this series, his immediate response was, "Every time I see Queen Anne's lace, I think of Mom." Believe it or not, he didn't even realize that was the first flower in my series. And my sister told the story that also was quite vivid in my memory about a time when we were with Mom digging up Queen Anne's lace somewhere to transplant it to another spot because it is a flower she has always loved. On her birthday, when people sent photographs of flowers to tell her happy birthday, another friend sent a picture of Mom with Queen Anne's lace. So that flower of all of them has certainly resonated with a lot of people for this series, and even another cousin in Virginia has told stories about Mom and Queen Anne's lace. Flowers have been a big part of my life growing up. My parents have long nurtured Jasmine Hill Gardens and Outdoor Museum and made that available to the public. And as far as Mom and flowers, she's the one that always loved to pick the flowers and do beautiful flower arrangements, and that's something that she taught me. And then beyond that, a part of the whole family cycle is that Dad has nurtured those flowers and will often show up at the front door for her with the flowers. And it's interesting how things have transitioned now that I'm photographing a flower every day, because Dad brings a plastic cup full of flowers to my front door some days so that I have my supply of flowers to photograph. And it has given us something nice to talk about in addition to the day-to-day care of Mom. And actually just this morning he called and said, "What is going to be your flower today?" So it's really neat how that has come full circle with our family and flowers. I love showing the flowers to both Mom and Dad, and with Dad, it's really neat on some days when I can show him a picture and he won't know what it is. I'll often abstract something so that you really have to guess as to what that flower may be, and then he also gets a kick out of teaching me the names of plants. I've always enjoyed flowers but not been as good at learning their names, and now I'm getting better at actually learning the names, and he's my best teacher. When I started this, I was afraid that I would run out of flowers, that I would be guilty of going to the grocery store too often to pick something up, but the surprise has been that flowers just present themselves, whether it be someone telling me about something they've seen or bringing me something, or I might notice a blooming weed that I had simply never seen before. And that is fun as well. I remember this spring I was headed to photograph an azalea, and I got stopped along the way because I saw a weed, and that ended up being the flower for that day because it was unique and the light was on it just right. So it's amazing that each and every day there seems to be a flower that presents itself. And that image won't be anything like an earlier image of that same flower. So I do repeat them, and one flower that has appeared quite a bit is the camellia. My mother's parents both loved camellias and participated in camellia shows, so that flower has certainly always been a part of my world. And I have photographed a budding camellia, a detail of just the leaf and the side of a camellia, a camellia right after a frost. And what happens after a frost is that first the lower petals of the flower will start to turn brown. So that's another one in the camellia series. And then on another day, someone had brought me some Dusty Miller. And I didn't quite consider that a flower, but I thought it was such a great gesture and wanted to include it in this series. So I used the Dusty Miller as the backdrop for a camellia that I had clipped during the holidays, actually when I was thinking it might freeze and wanted to go ahead and have that flower on hand. And another day I was out in the garden photographing a camellia, and sometimes I'll feel like I don't have the shot, so I'll step away and reapproach. And on this day I stepped away, and what happened is I looked down and I saw some beautiful golden camellias that had already passed their prime that were down on the ground. And then I photographed one in the foreground that I considered to represent me, and then the other faded flower in the background I considered to be my mother. So that is an example of one type of flower that I photographed many times. The thing that has been fun that Mom has exclaimed more than once is, "You do this every day?" And I say, "Yes, every day." And she marvels at that and asks what in the world I'm going to do with them. And I have found that a way to show them to her that she especially enjoys is on my iPad. So we'll just scroll through images and I'll tell her the story about particular flowers. And then I have been fortunate enough to have had a couple of pieces that have been in gallery shows and in other spaces, and when those have been local, we've been able to take her to actually see the artwork, and that too helps put it in perspective as to what it is I'm doing, and she seems to appreciate the flowers. When this started, I decided I wanted to make every image horizontal, and then I wanted to take every image with the same lens. Granted, I can get closer or farther back from something to change how something looks, but there's a bit of discipline in always having the same lens on my camera. And then the other really hard rule that I gave myself is that I can only do one a day. So I can't photograph 5 today and then take a break. It is 1 a day. And that's a part of marking time with Mom. And it's a cause for me to pause and think of her each day. And then beyond that, my children and my husband know that every day I'm going to take a picture of a flower for Mom, and it's a way for all of us to remember. And it has extended beyond my family, because I'll have friends call and say, "I just saw so-and-so blooming on this corner," or "in my yard I have this," or "my husband gave me roses for my birthday, would you like to photograph them?" So it has extended well beyond just us. When I talk about the rules for this series, sometimes I feel that I have perhaps set some tough boundaries, and my husband once reminded me, he said, "You know, this is your series and they're your rules, and you can change them or make it up as you go along." So I have taken that to heart, and periodically I have taken some artistic license in deciding what exactly is a flower. But one thing I had been seeing outside of the window is our fabulous ornamental grass, and I had just concluded that I couldn't come up with a way to proclaim that that was a flower. But on this one day, the light was absolutely beautiful. And I decided, well, the rules are changing today, and this is going to be a flower. So I went out and photographed the tips of this ornamental grass, and it was not until I got that shot on the computer and blew it up that I saw indeed on the tips of this ornamental grass were teeny tiny flowers. There's a lot of symbolism in flowers. One thing that has been fun about this is the stories and things that other people will share. When this cousin sent me her reflection tied to Alzheimer's, her husband had had Alzheimer's, she said, you know, I really could see these words being in a book paired with a dandelion. And really within about 3 days, I was at a friend's house trying to photograph some broccoli that she had allowed to flower for me, and it just wasn't working. So I had to step back so that I could reapproach, and I looked over near the fence, and there was a lone little sprig of dandelion with the sunshine on it, and I was like, well, that was meant to be my flower today. And within a few hours, my dad called and said, hey, you said you wanted a dandelion. I just saw one. So there must have been something about the first mention from a cousin about dandelion that made that flower present itself to be the flower of the day. One day I went to my grandmother's old house, and she always loved roses and flowers in general, but I spotted a pink rose and in the background a faded bloom. So I deliberately photographed those two to symbolize my mother and my grandmother. And then lo and behold, soon after that, I spotted a similar setup with roses at my mother's house, and on that day I shot it from the perspective of, this is like me and my mother. And I will periodically print these to share with Mom and with others, and I had a book of these prints, and I had put them side by side, and my 12-year-old nephew looked at those and he was like, oh, look at that. It's like the faded person and the still blooming person. So it's great when other people can recognize the symbols that are in the things I shoot. And to that I'll add that as artists, we might have a certain vision when we are creating something, but then it's really a gift to anyone who chooses to appreciate that art, for them to then receive it and interpret it as they like. And that's one thing I've loved about these flowers, is that they can resonate with people and touch them in ways that I never imagined when I shot it. The flowers have been resonating with people, especially on social media. And someone months ago suggested that on my mother's birthday, we get people to post a photograph of a flower to celebrate her birthday. So on that day, I asked exactly that, and it was incredible how many people sent flowers. And these are friends from many years ago, friends who live all over the globe. And some of the flowers came with pictures of Mom with a particular flower. Others came with stories about how they associated my mother with flowers. And what I believe I like most about that gift to Mom on her birthday is that all of these people paused and thought about her, but it also caused them to simply pause and enjoy nature. And that's one thing that I hope is becoming a clear message with this series, is that each and every one of us needs to pause every day and find beauty in our day. And nature and flowers can give us such a great thing to enjoy. On certain days, there might be an event, and that causes me to be deliberate in what I might want to photograph that day. On Mom and Dad's 51st wedding anniversary, Dad brought Mom roses, and a red rose was the flower for that day. On my wedding anniversary, I carried calla lilies, so I got 2 calla lilies, one to symbolize me and another to symbolize my husband. And my dad is a Valentine's baby, and on his birthday we were together. We'd sung happy birthday to him at breakfast, and I was trying to figure out what my flower of the day would be, and just the afternoon before, Dad had brought me bridal veil spirea. And I knew that it might not last very long cut, and I wanted to photograph it pretty soon, but I was struggling because it was Dad's birthday. And seeing Mom and Dad together to start his birthday and realizing that it was a very different birthday than many of his recent ones, I decided that probably to think about the flower of that day in terms of marriage and a bride as he was looking at his bride. So a friend of mine has a daughter getting married, and I asked if she had the bridal veil yet, which she did. And I went and photographed bridal veil spirea on top of a bridal veil. And that to me symbolized marriage and how many years, and you never know as you're starting marriage where that journey will take you. When I'm traveling, I will often try to be deliberate in getting a flower in that state or that location, and I'm at 10 states so far. The Queen Anne's lace is from Western New York. I have also taken some photographs in Central Park in New York City. There is this fabulous bug on a squash blossom that's from Pennsylvania. There's a picture in the snow in Massachusetts, another picture with some frost from Connecticut. I've gotten photographs in North Carolina, South Carolina, multiple shots in Georgia, and of course my home state of Alabama. And Tennessee has been another spot where I have gotten quite a few photographs. One day I was outside and someone had told me that there were butterflies on some flowers, so my husband kindly took me over to find them, and when I got back to my friend I showed her the back of the camera, and it was a perfectly perched butterfly, and she just said, "How did you do that?" And I said, "Well, I think Mom helped me do that." So I really feel more like she is on my shoulder sometimes as I'm taking these pictures and helping guide me to the right thing and the right combination. And I also am feeling touched to be patient periodically. And that's when some of the greatest surprises happen. As a matter of fact, there are butterflies, but there are bugs and bees and things that I will go out to be photographing something, and then it's as if they knew I was there, and they will suddenly appear and decide they want to pose. There was one day when I looked out the window while I was on the phone and I saw the light just perfectly on a flower, and as soon as I hung up the phone I ran outside with my camera, and about 5 frames in some bees appeared and said hello, and then they were gone again. But it can often be just enough for me to photograph them. And then sometimes I might not even notice them. When I set photographs, I pay attention to the background. And I was in my parents' backyard one day and loved a faded purple flower. And beside it was this wonderful seed pod, and then in the background was this leaf with a great shape. So I saw the whole photograph setting up, but I was focused on the faded purple bloom, again, the purple of Alzheimer's. And when I got back in the house, I showed Dad, and we talked about it, and he too loved the seed pod and made the comment that the seed pod is like the promise of the sons and daughters of tomorrow. It wasn't until I got that shot on my computer and saw it large that I realized there were actually 2 insects that were on that seed pod. And that image to me is such a great example of the whole life cycle of a flower. And this flower series has been reminding me of life cycles and how things do have a season. And in whatever phase of the life cycle something may be, it's still quite beautiful, even when it has faded. I have long had a fear of lizards, and my children know that there's a particular shriek that goes with mom seeing a lizard. And on one day, a friend had said, "You should run by my mom's house, go in the back, and she has some flowers blooming." So I was in the back of the house photographing this one particular flower, and all of a sudden I realized that there was a lizard climbing on this flower, and I decided, well, let's just go with this and see what happens. So it was, rather than a game of cat and mouse, it was a game of photographer and lizard. And the shot that I ended up choosing for that day was the lizard with his eyes closed, because that most reminded me of how mom can be on some days when we're just trying to help her move from one place to another. At this point, I will find it hard to stop, because certainly as a photographer, I'm growing in my skill set, because you start to really think about things differently when you are photographing a specific type of thing every single day. But I love the fact that this is giving me a cause to be disciplined about every single day, finding a way to connect with nature. I might stop one day, and that time has not yet come. Mom is still with us, and we're celebrating her life. And I suppose it's a bit like Forrest Gump in the movie when he started just running, and one day he realized that he was finished running. I have been photographing a flower a day since August the 2nd of 2016, so it's been over a year now, and it's hard to believe that there are so many flowers I've now photographed more than once. Each time I approach them, I see them differently. As with anything, if you do it every day, you start to fine-tune your skills, and the discipline of it has been such a gift to me as a photographer. And at this juncture, I have photographed flowers in 11 different countries and 19 different states. So now when I am going anywhere, I consciously ponder where I might be able to go to add yet another state to that list. The flowers have been varied. I've certainly learned a lot of new flower names and have had fun asking friends to help me identify different types of flowers that I have seen. And it's been phenomenal, because people will send me photographs that they take when they are on their own travels, and they'll send them to Mom, but also as a way to say, thanks to your flowers for Mom, I now pay attention to flowers and things that I've never noticed before. And that has been a gift to me, is how this project has grown beyond our family and started to touch other people. Mom is certainly doing a lot better now than she was when this project started, which is a delight for all of us to witness. And while there are a lot of great researchers out there trying to solve the puzzle and come up with a way to cure this disease, that doesn't yet exist. But what I can tell you is that we have an opportunity to be with the people who are living with dementia, to make their days brighter just as they are. And it's encouraging to see how when we keep people engaged and active in social settings and out and moving and doing things, that it helps the mind, brightens the spirit, and makes their days really quite good and happy. And again, that circles back to this flower project, because it is something that I do every day, and we all need to find joy in our day. So Mom is finding joy in her days, and through the flowers, I'm able to notice little spots of joy along the way also. People ask me if I've missed a day, and believe it or not, for over a year now, I have not missed a day. A flower has presented itself every day, and there was one time when I woke up just past midnight and panicked that I had not gotten my flower of the day, but then I sort of replayed the tape of the afternoon and remembered that I had indeed gotten my flower for that day. It's the discipline of this project that amazes people, that I take a flower picture every day. I don't skip one, and I don't save up multiple images that I might get on one day, which is hard when you're somewhere really pretty, but I still follow the rules that I initially set for myself. And along the lines with Mom and Alzheimer's, it's not like she can pick a day to skip it, so every day I shoot a flower for Mom. To now be this far in starts to give the project credence, and it really is increasing the ability to have important conversations. And that is important to those of us who have family members with a health problem. Is we all want to try to do something to make a difference. And now what this series is allowing is for me to have conversations. And I'm getting invited to speak in places, and I hope that continues, because through flowers there is so much to be learned. Obviously the beauty of them, the importance of protecting our earth and nature and the beauty of it, but then also to let something like flowers lead into more difficult conversations about respite care and challenges that face the aging and their families. When I post these pictures periodically on Instagram, for example, I will often add flowers for Mom, honoring an Alzheimer's journey, and celebrating nature. And that second part of celebrating nature is really an important part of this. We all sometimes forget that there are so many varieties of flowers, and what might grow in one location is not going to grow in another part of the world, or if a storm comes through and takes down a tree, what was once shaded might be in bright sun, and we have to make changes. And what we choose to do as humans in terms of nurturing our earth is important, and as this flower series indicates, it matters. These flowers are precious, and to still have so many varieties is remarkable, and I'm delighted to be able to, in an artistic way, be documenting so many of these gorgeous flowers around our globe. There have been many days where I have thought maybe it's time to stop, and it can get really hard to get that shot. And I might have taken 50 frames and not had it, and then landed 150 and still not had the shot. And sometimes it will take all the way to 250 before I think somewhere in here I have a single shot that will work for today. And just as miraculous as it is how a flower presents itself every day, it is miraculous how something will happen to keep me inspired. It might be an opportunity for an interview such as this. I've gotten a phone call about my first solo show in a museum. And then it can be as simple as an email that might come in from someone that says, I just want you to know how much this means to me. Or I might pass someone who will say, I took a picture of a flower and it's not anything like one of yours, but thank you for inspiring me to do this. And of course what they don't realize is that they are actually the ones inspiring me to keep going. When Mom's illness took a sharp turn downward, it took a friend reminding me that we were on a marathon, not a sprint. And you have to take each day as it comes. So I look at this flower series in the same way. Right now it is indeed a marathon. I've been going for a long time, and I don't quite know how much longer I will go, but the meaning continues to be there. The series is touching people well beyond me and my family, and I hope that it will find new and important ways to make a difference in the lives of others. And as long as that is still happening, I hope that I'm still ready, willing, and able to keep photographing a flower a day.